Welcome to Could Be Pretty Cool News, the podcast where we dive into the exciting world of creative entrepreneurship. I'm your host, Casey, and together we'll embark on a journey to explore this dynamic ecosystem from multiple angles, including academia, research and data, community building, and compelling personal narratives from creative entrepreneurs themselves. Get ready to be inspired, informed, and empowered as we uncover the stories and strategies behind building successful creative ventures. It's time to discover why the world of creative entrepreneurship could be pretty cool. On today's episode, we sit down with DeShuna Spencer, the founder and CEO of kweliTV. With a passion for authentic narratives, DeShuna has created a platform that amplifies global Black stories, offering a diverse array of independent films, documentaries, web series, and more. Join us as we explore the journey of a trailblazer who has turned a moment of frustration into a groundbreaking streaming service that celebrates the richness of the African diaspora. So yes, we are so excited to have DeShuna Spencer on the show today. DeShuna, could you just tell us a little bit more about you and just let folks know who you are?
I am DeShuna Spencer, and I am the founder and CEO of kweliTV. That's KWELITV. We are a streaming service, a digital platform that celebrates global Black stories. We have independent films, documentaries, web shows, children's programming, animation, working on immersive stories that represents the entire African diaspora. So when I say African diaspora, that means content from here, Africa, Latin America, the Caribbean, Europe, Australia, even parts of Asia, all Black stories. We source all of our films from film festivals. We're really about showcasing high quality Black stories. Kweli is actually a Swahili term, it means truth. And our mission is to curate content that's a true reflection of the global Black experience.
So, did you wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to start a media network today? How did this all start for you?
The ideal or the inspiration came, I would say, many years ago when I had cable, like maybe a decade ago. So it's been a long journey. And I was flipping through a bunch of cable channels and I didn't see anything I wanted to see. It was really the height of reality TV. I mean, most of Black women who were on TV were fighting each other on some type of reality show. And I'm really into independent. I'm really into like really. Of course, I like all movies. I'm not really like picky like that, but I was really in the mood for something Black, like something like really culturally enriching, and I couldn't find it. Maybe there's something on History Channel. Maybe there's by chance. Of course, it wasn't February, so of course, it wasn't nothing happening. And I immediately cut cable. So I was reading blogs and I was learning about these amazing independent films that were in these film festivals. I was like, dang, I wonder if I can watch these films. And when I didn't see it, I assumed that someone else was already doing it. And that's when the light bulb hit off. I'll do it. I'll start this streaming service. And then the second thing I said was like, what did I just say? Like, I started a what? Like a huh? And this was 10 years ago when there weren't a lot of streaming services. It took years for it to really get off the ground because I didn't know anything. People are like, wow, like, what's your background? Did you have a background in film and television? My background's in journalism. I was a journalist. I had an online magazine before starting Quilly TV. So it wasn't like I worked for Paramount or, worked for Netflix, because I think at the time, the only streaming services were Netflix and Hulu. HBO had some sort of HBO Go thing back in the day. They're kind of dipping their toes in the water, but not doing anything really important. And so I was pretty much going in very blindly, not knowing what I was doing, but I knew what I wanted. And I had a very strong passion for this type of content, really wanting to amplify these stories that I couldn't find and wanting stories that I could feel celebrated and understand Black culture in a way that I couldn't find anywhere else. Like this, this cultural content where you're being fed, versus sort of content that can take away, can take away your joy, can take away your peace. I really wanted to sort of create the opposite for the programming that I wanted to see on my future streaming service that I thought about all of a sudden one day.
So that's amazing. To your point, yeah, 10 years ago, we had a few options for streaming service providers. It wasn't like today where you literally like we're trying to figure out how do we cancel some of the ones that I don't watch because I just have so many. And
Mhm.
so how as a visionary, do you have any advice for any other creator, creative entrepreneur who's like, I think the thing that I want to do might exist in the future. I don't really know, but I'm gonna just like go and do it anyway. What words of advice would you have for them?
I would say the first thing is just write down the ideal because it's one thing that you sort of have in your head. Writing it down really makes it real, for one. And then number two, I can just tell people sort of the journey that I went through from going from having an online magazine to having a streaming service. And so the first thing I did was talk to one of my board members from our online magazine. He was a full stack developer. Told him my ideal, and he started helping me find people who could help me build the MVP. He really held my hand in a lot of ways because I didn't know anything. And so I pretty much had to take a real quick course into business and how it worked. And because there's so many aspects. How do you start streaming? Like, how do you even get the tech part together, right? I I remember Googling something on trying to figure out how Netflix built theirs. And of course, they're not giving away anything. When I started my online magazine, there were books on how to start an online magazine. There was even a book how to start an online magazine for dummies. Like even there was a dummies version of it. There is Reed Hastings doesn't have like a podcast or have some type of blow by blow manual on how to start a streaming service. They didn't want any competition. They wish they were the only ones that existed. And so I pretty much just had to figure it out. So I would just tell people that just don't worry about the resistance, especially if you're early into something. You're going to get a lot of resistance, not only from people who are in the industry who may be bigger, may have more money, may be more powerful, but even maybe family and friends who will be like, you want to do a what? Child, you barely graduated from high school. So some people maybe graduate thank you louder, as they say down south. And I would just encourage people to not worry about the past, even worry about, what their limitations are, but just focus on what the opportunities could be and maybe your unique spin on it and just do it because people think I'm super brave, and maybe I am in some respects. I'm also super stubborn. I will say that, where people were like, "You can't do it." Bet, like that sort of me, like, all right, we'll see, type of thing. Just having that type of attitude where you're like, no matter what, I'm gonna try to make it happen, and then like being okay with pivoting. Okay, this isn't maybe not how I expect it to be, and maybe I should pivot to something else that may make more sense, that can be more profitable, and just being open minded to sort of the journey that you'll be embarking on because it's going to be absolutely hard. But if you are passionate about it, then the harder days won't be as traumatic because you know you're doing it for a purpose.
The harder days won't be as traumatic. I love the realness there. And yes, we would definitely consider you to be brave. Going into entrepreneurship in general is a tough road to travel, but going into a space where you literally have to learn the space and the resources to learn the space were scarce. That's like, whoa, super super impressive. And so this has been a 10-year journey for you, which is also impressive. We know the stats about, most, I think it's most companies after 5 years or 7 years, kind of decide this isn't going to work anymore. And so what are some of the accomplishments that you have attained thus far, some of the moments that you're the most proud of? What's going on with you all right now?
So I want to go back from the beginning. You mentioned 10 years, the biggest accomplishment was just launching out of beta. And that wasn't, I mentioned 10 years ago, we launched out of beta until fall of 2017. Fall of 2017. It took years to actually launch out of beta just because of lack of resources. And so I would say some of the biggest accomplishments we've made is number one, staying alive, despite all the challenges and the competition that's out there. For us staying true to our mission, we've had people who told us, why, Why are you having documentaries? Black folks only want to watch this, or Black folks only want to watch that. And we pretty much stay true to our game. And because of that, one of the biggest things that we've been able to do very recently, one thing is we launched our EDU portal, educational portal, to allow universities and schools to watch kweliTV's content. I think the reason we've been able to get these universities and schools on board is because the high quality content, and this is no shade or no knock to any other Black streamer, any other platform. However, we are extremely mission driven. We are very particular, and we curate our content, and so we have the type of content that schools want, the universities want, and they pay us to have access to our content. And so I feel very blessed and privileged to be able to pivot, as I mentioned earlier, but we still have our consumer side, but also we are expanding to our educational portal to allow schools, universities to onboard and watch content as well. And not only is it a way for us to bring in another stream of revenue, but we're also allowing students to make, these are PWIs, as we say. So these are students who may not always have access to these types of stories, this type of culture. However, I think that we can showcase Black history without it being laced with trauma, and Black people suffering so heavily in content. And so that's the type of content that we have, and we've been able to get universities involved. And then just a few weeks ago, we launched kweliFund, which is a crowdfunding platform that is exclusively for our nearly 500 creators. I wanted to create this fund because, well, just talking with our creators, so one of the challenges that they were facing was getting exposure on like another traditional platform, a crowdfunding platform, where it's like a needle in a haystack. There are thousands of platforms, thousands of options to choose from and projects to choose from. And with our platform, we kind of cap it at 5 to 7 at a time. We want to make sure that people know, that this content is on kweliTV. There's a direct link to the content from kweliFund, so people can vet the creator. We just want to be a space to make sure we're able to amplify them even more. So we're really excited about it. Very early stages, but we're very excited about it.
Yes, no, I'm very fascinated about this kweliTV fund because of the way that the entertainment industry is right now, coming out of COVID, coming off of actor strikes and writer strikes, and we're going into this new frontier of AI in filmmaking. The odds against independent content creators, especially when it comes to gaining funding and resources, are like stacked so high. And so, if I could just like pick your brain a little bit more about what sort of was the catalyst for you in sort of looking internally into, I mean, almost your own database of creators and saying, how can I create a way for the folks, as you said, who have already been vetted, who we know they're good, to continue to grow as creators, being that ecosystem builder
Mhm.
aside from what you're already doing to be an ecosystem builder?
For me, it was pretty much like a no-brainer for a kweliFund. A lot of our creators on the platform, they're working, or at least we're trying to work on the next project, and they all have amazing ideals. And if we were maybe larger, I would tell people like the future would be to do like a matching fund, like they raise 10,000, we give 10,000. We're not quite there yet, but I really want to just create a space where our creators could build the next project that they really wanted to build. I already know a space, I already have a space that be for them, kweliTV, and in a way where they don't have to compromise their storyline for like a big studio. I think that's probably one of their bigger challenges. You mentioned, with the writer strike and AI and all these things have been sort of happening then with COVID. There's a big shift happening right now in the entertainment industry. I think a lot of people, even big studios, aren't sure what's going to happen. I think that's why even they're like, let's try this. I think for a lot of independent creators, it could be a very scary time right now, just because for the big studios, I mean, at one point, I know I always tell people after the death of George Floyd, Ben and Taylor Marbury, and that the 2020 summer, 2020 fall, Black stories is Black everything. We just care about Black people. Even the potential investors, like we'll be on Twitter, like literally when it was called Twitter, they were literally saying, hey, if you are a Black or brown founder, DM me I would look at your deck. What? Like the biggest investors in the world. I would say 90% of those investors did not hold up to the end of the bargain. Most companies are sort of dialing back on diversity and inclusion to the point where you see what happened with Fearless Fund yesterday with the ruling. And a lot of the streaming services or other studios who are really, we want to build all this, not to say they haven't abandoned their storytelling for Black culture, but they definitely dialed back. I mean, I know a creator, he had a deal with the major studio. He was like, we're all eating, everyone's quote unquote eating in 2021. And then it kind of hit the fan, around 2023. And so the reality is that no one's coming to save us, unfortunately. We have to save ourselves. And if you are an independent creator, unless you have a big connection, it's really hard to get into the eyeballs and the I don't know, get in front of those big studios like you really are trying to. And so kweliTV see ourselves, we see a really great opportunity to be the first point of contact for a lot of amazing creators, like be the first vetting process and say, hey, we believe in your work. We want to put it on kweliTV, and we're hoping we can grow with you. Like as our platform grows, you grow, and we can build this amazing platform together. 60 already talk about, being equitable in funding. 60% of our subscription revenue already goes back to our content creators. Like we're already doing the work as far as making sure that we are giving back, maybe more than other platforms. And so we want to continue that type of trend, and that's why Fund is so important, because we're taking a step further, even beyond having our 6% subscription revenue going back to our creators, but also creating another space where they can also raise money for the next project that can be on kweliTV.
How can people learn more about kweliTV, and if they want to reach out to you directly, like how can people contact you?
Sure, that's a great question. So people can reach kweliTV, go to our website. It's kweli.tv. If you want to subscribe, we have a live channel that's free and ad supported as well. We also have our Kweli Fund, as was mentioned, and that's kweli.fund, FUND. Please support our creators who are trying to build the next amazing or create the next amazing project. And we're on all those places. We're on Roku, Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Samsung TV, we're on LG. So you can watch us on all your favorite platforms and apps. So I'm looking forward to, if you do want to reach out to me, you can email hello, well, you find spell hello. I'm so used to spelling everything. hello at kweli.tv.
In the second segment of today's episode, we're joined by Faye, a costume designer whose hands have been shaping characters and settings long before the spotlight. From her first theatrical role playing baby Jesus to her current work on Tyler Perry's Assisted Living, Faye has woven her path through the threads of theater, retail, and the demanding world of film sets. Get ready to be inspired by a story of determination, growth, and the art of costume design. She's not just dressing actors, she's crafting the visual narrative, one stitch at a time.
My name is Jordan Manselle, but I go by Faye. I've been going by Faye for a very long time. And I am a costume designer, costumer, and a seamstress. So that's what I do. I make clothes, I put clothes on people. Yeah. Well, I started in theater. My first role was Baby Jesus. I always tell people that. So I've been in theater a very long time. I did it in church, in middle school, high school, and I went on to do it in college. And I was an actress, but I found costumes in that environment. That's when I realized that I wanted to do things more behind the scenes and to be, having to learn lines and having to perform at a moment's notice. Yeah, I started sewing when I was 8, but I didn't really pick it up until college, and I just kept going with that. I went to Columbus State University and I majored in theater. I took an internship at Horizon Theater in Atlanta, Georgia. And it was great. I learned a lot. I actually learned how to do some wig design, you know, but it didn't really pay. So I ended up back in retail as one does, different, and also other fields. I sold cars for a little while, but my best friend is actually in the film industry, and he gave me the email for the supervisor on his production, who was in costumes. I've been, I majored in costumes, in theater with a focus in costumes. I worked retail pretty much my whole life in between all of that. And he's like, you could do this, just email her and see what happens. And so I did, and I got on the phone with her, and she hired me. So I've been in the industry ever since. And that was like a big career change at 28. Yeah. Well, I had actually been on a couple film sets as an extra because I had, this time in between my retail job, and the days off weren't always were sometimes during the week. So I had been considering joining the industry, and so I was a little bit familiar, but it was a totally different animal from being an extra than from being a costume PA, because that was the role I ended up getting. That was at Underground Railroad by Barry Jenkins. That was my first production. It was the limited series. Yeah, and it was a really, really fun time. I learned so much, and it really surprised me how much my experience in retail, of course in costumes, but in theater, but my experience in retail helped me with the clothes, because a lot of the practices that you do in retail, you would do to take care of clothes while they're being stored or maintained, like for actors. This is something simple, but you could take it for granted if you've been in retail that people don't know how to hang up clothes. The hanger should look to you like a question mark, and that's where the front of the clothing is, but people will hang it anyway. It'll go on a hanger, and it makes it difficult transporting clothes, moving them around. Something small like that is something I learned in retail. And then really and I think that kind of industry, being a server too, just having to deal with so many different personalities and stuff, because on a film set, there's a lot of people that you have to get used to. And when I eventually moved on doing background costuming, there's all these extras that they're kind of like customers in a way. Like, you're there to get them dressed and ready to go and be seen, but you still have to deal with that with, I think, grace, because I can jump all over, but I remember being an extra, and it was very frustrating because people treated you poorly a lot of the times. And I made a point when I got to background costumer not to do that, and to just use my retail customer service experience to just make it a good experience. We can get this done and get moving. Being a production assistant is like, you're just above background, honestly. So sometimes people don't treat you the best, but my grandmother, and therefore my mother, always told me to kill them with kindness. So that's my philosophy with dealing with people. And I just made a point to really get to know my coworkers' taste and interest, because one of my jobs, which I was very proud of, was keeping craft services full for my department. I took a lot of pride in shopping for that. People noticed my work ethic and my dedication to whatever task I was given. It would be creating boards for costumes that, so that the designer can have all their little pictures up on one board so they can see how it is, labeling, cleaning, whatever it was. I put my whole ass into it. That's my mom always told me not to half-ass anything. And I just learning where I could, because when you're a production assistant, that's when you have the time to learn about whatever trade you're trying to get into and make mistakes, where it doesn't really, no one's really expecting you to know what you're doing, and explore, basically. So I have that opportunity to go and hang out with the tailors, hang out with the set costumers, background costumers, and just really try to get a good understanding of what field I was getting myself into. Yeah. That I learned a lot, in between getting lunch and coffee and snacks and organizing non-clothing things, because PAs aren't supposed to touch clothes in our department. I think it's part of my work ethic, but it's also because I I needed it to work because I have goals in life, and it does, being a retail person making just barely over minimum wage isn't going to help me as much in my goals as this field, which was not only something that paid a lot more, it was the most money I'd ever made in my life at that point. it it used a lot of the skills that I already had, and it pushed me to grow. And I was just really interested. Like I've always been interested in clothing and fashion. And this particular series, it was a period show, which I didn't even know. My best friend told me, like, because I don't watch a lot of TV and movies. I went on to another production called They Clone Tyrone, and that was it's like just before the pandemic. No. Okay. So the pandemic happened while I was still on underground, but we went into They Clone Tyrone while things were still happening, and so it kind of it really affected how we worked, because all of a sudden, we were wearing masks, and we were out of work for 5 months, and then we came back to finish up the last 4 shooting days of Underground Railroad. We had to, wear masks, get tested. At some point, they started requiring vaccinations. Like it was pretty crazy trying to work during that time. On They Clone Tyrone, I was the first costume PA. Like there, like we ended up having one more later on, but I was there from the start. Like taking in the incoming shopping, writing up like where it came from and when it needed to be returned, things like that. Of course, snacks and coffee, getting people juice. And I consider myself to be kind of old for a PA, and I think most people would. And I knew like this was my career path now. Like I still don't think I knew exactly that I was going into background and set costuming, but like I'm in the industry now, so I was the costume designer on that show, Miss Francine Jameson Tanchuk. She's an amazing, lovely person, and her husband Earl Tanchuk. They really encouraged me to move forward. Like they are the ones who encouraged me to join the union. They wrote me recommendations for it. I had to get a sponsor who was actually in the union. That was a costumer Alicia, who I let me just like follow her around on the Underground Railroad. Like she took me under her wing and like showed me everything. So it was really important for her to be my sponsor. And then my supervisor on that show and the assistant costume designer on that show as well wrote me a recommendation letter so I could get into the union. And it was really special to me. Some people think, so I'm not trying to talk poorly about anybody, but some people like take it for granted. They're like, oh, I'll just throw the money in there and get whoever to sign up. It was personal for me, and so that's why I wanted people who had been with me on my journey, encouraged me on the way, to be the ones who actually gave their names for mine. And yeah, and I will say I got lucky because not only I was too old to be like hanging around as a PA for years, and I had the work ethic that people recognized, and I had people who believed in me. I also was convenient. I'm not saying there's really any age that you can't, but I was coming from being an assistant manager at a retail store, but it's just, I don't even think it was too old. I think I was too mature to be in that role. Like I think I had the wherewithal and the drive to move forward, and I had prior experience, and it wasn't like I was 18 years old and this is my first ever job, so I think I had the right maturity to progress and start learning ahead of time. If they're younger, or it's their first job or something like that, or they don't have any kind of background that would have helped them in the industry, they might need some more time. And I was just really determined. So I tried to absorb everything that I could so that I could progress. And there are some people who they don't move through it as quickly because it's just a job to them. They're like, oh, I'm just here to work. I'm here to get money. And I'm like, I'm here because this is my career now. And another thing I will say, it's also not thinking you know everything, because I've seen that as well, where people they come in the industry and they're here. Like I've been in for a few years now. I'm still not like 8, 10, 30 years like some people, but I have I always try to maintain openness to learning and teaching, of course. Like anything that I know, I'm willing to teach, and I really appreciated that from the people that helped me as I was and still am growing in this industry. Um, I, but if you're the type of person who just thinks you know everything and you're not willing to learn from the people around you, I think you're missing out. Oh, okay, yeah. So when the writer strike started, I don't think we were affected, and we finished up and everything. And so I was like, okay, cool. This is nice. I'm gonna have a break. And then kept getting longer and longer, and I was like, okay, I think I should. I have a savings. Everybody should have savings at least 6 months. I lived off of that for a little while, and then I was like, okay, I guess I better get on unemployment. This is going on a lot longer than I thought. And then I was getting close to unemployment. I'm like, wow, this is still going. And then the actors started, and I was like, wow, okay, what's happening? I do alterations and stuff, but at this point in my life, I'm trying to get a better setup for my sewing studio, because it's kind of backtracking, but when I moved back home, I wasn't intending to be there very long, so I didn't really get situated. And now that I'm like, okay, in this economy, I'm gonna stick around here and just and just turn this basement into the best working area ever. And so that is primarily what I did while I was unemployed during the strike. I just kept working on that. I took some alterations projects. I did a wedding dress. I also did another play, because I don't know if I mentioned, but I did my first play as a costume designer last year in May. And that led to 3 other productions that I did at the end of last year. One was at the end of last year and 2 at the beginning of this year. And then I did another one in October, and it's currently still running while I've got another show that just opened like a week ago. And so it's kind of cool. That was some money in between waiting for the shows to start. I did keep busy, but things were getting tight because unfortunately, we had to wait. We had to see. The biggest thing for me that the writers and actors were dealing with was AI. And I'm like, if we try to push them into just backing down for something like that, just because we want to get back to work, we're going to get into so much trouble next year when it's our turn to talk about it and try to negotiate. Because if they can't protect themselves from AI, I don't think IATSE is going to be able to either, or the Teamsters or whatever. I mean, I don't know. I think because I'm in the portion that would be affected if the actors were all of a sudden AI. I mean, do you really need a costumer on set? It's frightening that some people think that it's okay to try to replace real people in the arts. Like, we should be using it to, write our boring emails, maybe generate our social media posts, like do all these, like, I like that there's a robot for vacuuming. Great. Like, I don't need digital robots trying to replicate heart and soul. Like, that I think bothers me. Yeah, I'm really excited for all the opportunities that it'll bring, but I think it should be opportunities to help artists, not to replace them.
Oh, yeah.
And, if they replace actors and writers, I don't think they're going to need costumers and costume designers as much anymore. The departments are going to shrink, and stuff is going to feel lifeless and soulless.
Ooh.
Right now, I'm working as a set costumer on Tyler Perry's Assisted Living. This is my 3rd time at Tyler Perry Studios. I really enjoy working with the people there. And the show is fun. It's a fun sitcom. I do miss doing features. I did work for a little bit on 688 earlier this year. The tailor shop was my very first time in the tailor shop, because I really put a lot of value in being multifaceted, like being able to sew and design and style and all that. I think it only helps me. I like opportunities to be able to grow different parts of myself. Yeah, and like right now I'm just continuing to work on my studio space, because there's like organization that I want to do. There's like video setup that I'd like to do. And I just want to make it into like a place where I can go make things that I want to make, film it properly, maybe do a video so that I can share some of the things that I know, or just share the things that I'm doing. Because one of the things I did learn from the strike is I don't know if it's safe for the film industry to be my only source of income. So I think it's important to find other ways, and I would prefer it to be related, because if what I'm doing outside the industry is related to inside, it's only going to feed each other and keep moving forward that way. So I've also costume designed a play for the Stage Door Players. It's called It's a Wonderful Life. I believe there's one weekend left. And at the same time, I have Schoolhouse Rock live running at the Circuit Playhouse in Memphis, Tennessee. And it's been really wonderful being able to work in theater again, doing costumes, doing what I love, because it's such a fulfilling feeling to like see everybody on stage wearing, you know, the things that I chose that I felt would speak most to their character and themselves, because I feel, you know, every actor puts a bit of themselves into their character. Yeah, and I'm really excited to continue forward with that as well. I would say to anyone who's trying to be a creative out here, trying to hold everything together and make it work, just to keep trying, don't give up. I think one of the important things for me has been finding what works for me, because I think a lot of people try to focus on what works for other people, and what works for other people doesn't always work for you. So I have to find ways to manage so that I can manage my dreams and goals. I think it's really important to keep trying to get to know yourself and who you are and what makes you work.
And that brings us to the end of today's episode. Until next time, we encourage you to continue nurturing your process. Farewell, and may all of your creative endeavors flourish. Could Be Pretty Cool News is a Could Be Pretty Cool original production that was workshopped as a part of the 2023 Google News Initiative Pre-Launch Lab. This episode was edited by Trinity Jackson. Our executive producer and host is Casey Willis, and our production coordinator is Liz Moore. The original theme music was composed by Camille Stennis, and our cover art was designed by Aaliyah Johnson. Special thanks to our guests. To find out more about them, you can visit our newsletter at couldbeprettycoolnews.substack.com. Thank you for listening.